The circular chamber of the Galactic Confederation hummed with the quiet authority of 1,000 gathered species. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in tiered rows, their varied biologics filtered and accommodated by the chamber's advanced atmosphere. It was a place of laws, of treaties, of the delicate balance that kept the cosmos from descending into chaos. Today, the agenda was a formality, a resolution so universally accepted that the debate was expected to last no more than a few standard time units. Resolution 9847G, the provision of protective guardianship for the species Homo sapiens. The human delegates' chair had been empty for the first 30 cycles of discussion. This was not seen as an insult, but as a confirmation of their need. The Terrans, as they were known, were a curious case. They had burst onto the galactic stage with a startlingly short history of spaceflight, their vessels crude but effective, their diplomats a confusing mix of boisterous friendliness and unnerving directness. They had been granted observer status, then full membership, all within a single generation. But their rapid ascent had also painted a target on their backs. Ambassador Thrax of the Cathar Empire, a towering insectoid being with a chitinous carapace of deep crimson, was the resolution's primary sponsor. He clicked his mandibles, a sound the translators rendered as a tone of grave concern. "The evidence is irrefutable," he boomed, his voice a resonating hum. The Terran homeworld, while possessing a surprising degree of resilience, is located in a sector of space with rising pirate activity, and the Verlocken Syndicate has already raided 2 of their fringe colony outposts. Their military, while spirited, is laughably underdeveloped. They possess no energy shielding on their primary vessels. Their FTL drives are inefficient, and their ground forces utilize projectile weaponry. It is our sacred duty, as the elder races of the Confederation, to extend our protection over them. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The pale, amphibian representatives of the Aquini nodded their bulbous heads. The stoic, rock-like Gornak pounded a fist on their desks in approval. It was a noble gesture, one steeped in the paternalistic tradition of the Confederation, to protect the young, the Ruo Xiao, the promising. The Cathar are, of course, willing to shoulder the primary burden of this guardianship, Thrax continued, then his multifaceted eyes gleaming. A permanent Cathar battle group stationed in the Sol system, along with advisors on all major human worlds, would ensure their safety and allow them to develop in peace under the watchful eye of a more experienced civilization. The implication was clear. It was not just protection. It was oversight. It was a leash. It was the first step from independent member to a protectorate, a subtle shift in power that had happened to a dozen less advanced species over the millennia. The debate continued, a droning consensus of charity. No one spoke against it. Why would they? It was for humanity's own good. Then the main doors to the chamber hissed open. A woman walked in. She was not tall by human standards, nor did she wear the elaborate, formal robes that most delegates favored. She wore a dark gray jumpsuit, the uniform of the Terran Merchant Marine, with a patch on her shoulder depicting a stylized tree against a blue planet. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, no-nonsense bun, and her face was calm, betraying no emotion. This was Elara Vance, the newly appointed Human Sector Ambassador. She had been stuck in a bureaucratic tangle on a transport for 2 days, a minor administrative delay that had kept her from the opening of the session. She walked past the ornate podiums and took her seat, the only empty one in the entire amphitheater. All eyes were on her. The silence was profound. Ambassador Thrax, slightly annoyed by the interruption to his moment of triumph, inclined his head. "Ah, the Terran delegate arrives. You are just in time for the vote, Ambassador Vance." "We were just discussing the terms of your species' protection. A formality, really. I am sure you will find the terms most generous." Elara Vance did not respond immediately. She placed a small data slate on the desk in front of her and calmly tapped the screen, reviewing the resolution. The seconds stretched, the silence growing heavier. Finally, she looked up. Her gaze was not that of a supplicant, not of a grateful recipient of charity. It was the calm, assessing look of someone reading a contract for hidden clauses. Resolution 9847G, she said, her voice clear and even, carrying through the chamber's perfect acoustics. The provision of protective guardianship for the species Homo sapiens. She paused, looking directly at the Cathar ambassador. I have a question. Thrax's mandibles clicked in a gesture of expansive welcome. Of course, young one. Ask anything. This is a learning opportunity for your people. Her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. The resolution states that human space is threatened, that our military is underdeveloped, that we require the watchful eye of a more experienced civilization to ensure our safety. She looked down at her slate, then back at the assembly. My question is this. From whom, exactly, are we being protected? A wave of condescending titters ran through the chamber. The Aquini representative, a creature named Slicks, let out a gurgling laugh. From the Verlocan pirates, of course, my dear. From the lawless elements that prey on the weak. It is quite simple. And after the Verlocan are dealt with? Alara pressed, her tone unchanged. Who then? Thrax shifted his massive frame. A rustle of chitin. The Cathar battle group would remain as a deterrent, a permanent peacekeeping force. It is standard procedure. Standard procedure, Ilara repeated, as if tasting the words. And who polices the peacekeepers, Ambassador Thrax? If a Cathar soldier on a peacekeeping mission has a disagreement with a human farmer over a piece of land, whose laws apply? If a Cathar corporation decides it would be more efficient to manage a human mining operation, citing security concerns, who adjudicates? The chamber grew quieter. This was not the response they had expected. Thrax drew himself up to his full, intimidating height. You speak of hypotheticals, young lady. You impugn the honor of the Cathar Empire. We are offering you the safety of the Confederacy. We are offering you our strength, our technology, our millennia of experience. And you respond with suspicion? No, Ilara said, standing up. She was dwarfed by the insectoid, but in that moment she seemed to fill the space. I am responding with a question that any sovereign species would ask before signing away its future. You call our military underdeveloped. You say we lack shielding and efficient drives. You are correct. Our ships are tougher, simpler, and our weapons are projectile-based. But you have mistaken our philosophy for a lack of capability. She tapped her slate, and a holographic image shimmered to life above the central dais. It was a grainy, low-light video, taken from a helmet camera. It showed a human soldier, a woman, crouched behind a pile of rubble on a colony world. The sky was lit by the flashes of orbital bombardment. In the distance, sleek. But predatory ships with the Verlocan Syndicate's mark were descending. This is the Verlocan raid on New Hope 3 months ago, Ilara narrated calmly. You have the official reports, I assume. She tapped again. The footage changed. It showed the same battle, but from a different angle. A human soldier, armed with what looked like a simple metal tube, stood his ground as a Verlocan skimmer, a heavily armored craft with energy shields shimmering around it, swooped down to strafe the colonist's position. The soldier raised the tube, there was a puff of smoke, and a projectile, a simple, unguided piece of metal, shot through the air. It did not try to penetrate the shield. It did not need to. It hit the ground in front of the skimmer and exploded. The blast wasn't massive, but it was enough. The skimmer, and in a desperate maneuver to avoid the insignificant explosive, tipped a wing, its controls overcorrecting. It slammed into a prefab building and exploded in a ball of fire. The chamber was silent. The Verlocken rely on energy shields and ECM to make precision-guided munitions useless, Alara said. We don't use precision-guided munitions. We use high-velocity kinetics, area denial weapons, and a lot of them. Their ships are built for hit-and-run attacks on freighters, not for suppressing a population that considers a hunting rifle a standard household tool. They expected a soft target. They found a nest of angry wasps. Another tap. The hologram showed a schematic of a human transport ship, blocky and inelegant, next to a sleek Cathar cruiser. You say our FTL drives are inefficient. They are. They take us from point A to point B with no frills. They don't have the range of your drives. They don't have the speed. But you know what they do have? She pointed to the schematic. Reinforced hulls, multiple redundancies, and manual overrides for every single system. When a Cathar cruiser loses power to its main computer, it's a drifting tomb. When a human ship loses power, we light a candle and keep flying. She turned to face the assembly, her eyes sweeping across the rows of alien faces. You see us as a fledgling race, just learning to walk. You look at our technology and see a child's toys. But you are looking at the wrong things. Our military isn't underdeveloped, Ambassador. It's appropriate for our needs. And our needs historically have been to fight things that were bigger, stronger, and better armed than us. She gestured to the silent hologram. The Verlocken raid on New Hope failed. The colonists lost 17 people. The Verlocken lost 2 assault ships and over 100 raiders. They have not returned. They don't need a Cathar battle group to deter them. They have learned that the cost of raiding a human world is unacceptably high. She then pulled up a new set of data, a star map with trade routes highlighted. You speak of protection, but let's look at who benefits from this resolution. The Cathar battle group would need to be supplied. Supply lines would run right through Cathar space. The advisors on our worlds would be Cathar, who would naturally recommend Cathar technology for our development, technology we would then have to purchase from Cathar corporations. Our trade routes would be secured by Cathar patrols, who would have the authority to inspect our ships for contraband. It's a very neat package. We get a leash, and you get a monopoly on a burgeoning interstellar economy. Thrax slammed a heavy claw onto his desk. This is outrageous. You accuse the Cathar Empire of what? Of altruism? Of trying to help? I accuse you of nothing, Ilara said, her voice as steady as a rock. I am simply reading the text of the resolution and extrapolating the logical outcome. The Confederation has a long history. I've read the archives. I know exactly how this story goes. Protectorate today, vassal tomorrow, and in a few centuries, a minor forgotten member race, grateful for the scraps from the table of its protectors. She leaned forward, placing her hands on her desk. So I will ask my question one more time, and I expect a direct answer. The Council claims humans require protection. From whom exactly? From the Verlocken pirates, who we are already handling. From the instability of the galaxy, which we have navigated just fine on our own? Or from the benevolent ambitions of our would-be protectors? The silence that followed was absolute. The paternalistic, charitable atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by a tense, electric charge. The other delegates shifted uncomfortably. They had never heard a young race speak like this, with such clear-eyed understanding of galactic politics. It was the Aquini, Slicks, who broke the silence, his earlier condescension gone, replaced by a wary curiosity. Your passion is noted, Ambassador Vance, but you speak of self-sufficiency. You are one world, I with a handful of colonies. The Verlocken are a minor threat. What of the larger powers? What of the Xylos Confederacy, who are expansionist and have cast their gaze towards your sector? They possess a fleet that could swat your entire navy aside like a fly. Who will protect you from them? Ilara allowed a small, thin smile to touch her lips. The Xylos Confederacy, she repeated, as if the name were familiar. We are aware of them. In fact, we have been in contact with them. A new wave of murmurs rippled through the chamber. Contact with an expansionist power without Confederation mediation was a serious breach of protocol for a young race. You see, Ilara continued, when the Verlocken hit New Hope, we didn't just shoot back. We traced their supply lines. We found their bases. Yeah, and we found who was supplying them with their advanced weaponry. A lot of that tech, the stuff that was too advanced for the Syndicate to build themselves, bore the manufacturing marks of the Xylos Confederacy. She let that bombshell sink in. The Xylos secretly arming pirates in human space? It was a classic destabilization tactic. So we didn't go to the Confederation with our evidence, she said. We went directly to the Xylos. A single, unarmed diplomatic vessel, crewed by volunteers, jumped into their home system. We didn't ask for protection. We didn't ask for mediation. We simply presented them with our evidence and gave them a choice. We told them we knew they were testing our defenses, probing our weakness. We told them that we understood their strategy because we had used it ourselves against each other for thousands of years. And then we made them an offer. The chamber was mesmerized. Thrax stood frozen, his complex eyes unblinking. We offered them a trade agreement, Ilara said simply. Direct, unrestricted trade between human space and the Xylos Confederacy, bypassing Confederation tariffs and middlemen. We offered them access to our unique resources. In return, they would cease all support for anti-human factions and recognize our sovereign territory. They agreed. The silence that followed was not the silence of shock, but of sheer unadulterated disbelief. A young race, a species that had just learned to travel between stars, had not only identified a shadowy geopolitical threat, but had outmaneuvered it by appealing to its greed, bypassing the established power structures entirely. And they had turned a potential enemy into a trading partner with nothing more than a bold gamble and a clear understanding of realpolitik. Ambassador Thrax, Ilara said, turning back to the Cathar. You asked who would protect us from the Xylos. The answer is, we did. We protected ourselves, just as we have always done. We don't need a guardian. We need trading partners. We need open borders. We need respect as equals, not charity as children. She picked up her data slate. The Terran Confederation formally rejects Resolution 9847G. We will not become a protectorate. We will not host a peacekeeping force, and we will not be anyone's ward. She began to walk towards the main doors, the same way she had entered. But this time, the eyes that followed her were not filled with condescending pity. They were filled with a new, unfamiliar emotion when directed at a young race. Respect, tinged with a healthy dose of fear. Just as the doors hissed open, a reedy voice called out from the back of the chamber. It was a small, rodent-like creature, the representative of a minor merchant species whose entire economy relied on Confederation stability. Wait! Ambassador Vance? If you refuse our protection, and you've made a deal with the Xylos, what is to stop them from simply taking what they want later? You have a trade agreement, yes, but you have no military to enforce it. Ilara paused at the threshold. She turned her head slightly, her profile silhouetted against the bright light of the corridor. We have no fleet to match theirs, she agreed. Not yet, but you're all still thinking in terms of force. And the Xylos didn't agree to trade with us because they were scared of our guns. They agreed because we showed them a better way to get what they wanted. Our military isn't for projecting power across the galaxy. It's for making the cost of taking something from us unacceptably high. It's a shield, not a sword. She paused. But that's just our military. She turned to fully face them one last time. You look at our history and see wars, conflicts, and self-destruction. We see a record of problem-solving. We've faced extinction-level events, global wars, and resource crises. And every single time we've adapted, innovated, and found a way through. Not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we are relentlessly, stubbornly, often frustratingly, determined to survive. That's our real technology. That's what we bring to the table. The Xylos understand that. They saw a species that could be a valuable ally or a costly, protracted problem. They chose wisely. She gave a small, final nod. The Terran Confederation is open for business. We seek fair trade, mutual respect, and peaceful coexistence. But we are not for sale, and we are not for adoption. Good day. The doors hissed shut behind her, leaving the Galactic Confederation in a stunned, contemplative silence. Ambassador Thrax slowly sank back into his seat, his grand resolution in tatters. The other delegates began to speak in hushed, urgent tones. The political landscape of the sector suddenly, irrevocably, shifted. They had come to offer charity to a child, and instead they had been given a masterclass in statecraft by an equal. The humans, they were just beginning to realize, did not need a seat at the table. They were perfectly capable of building their own